So, Mary, thank you so much for coming in today. Before I get into the main part of the interview, I'm going to ask you my quick fire questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Gonna have to.
Okay, question number 1. What's one thing that sets your soul on fire? We were just kind of talking about this.
Well, actually, that's actually what we were talking about. It stops me being too spiritual. Sets my soul on fire is my joy of having my first cup of coffee that I make myself in a particular way with my little barista and my oat milk, and sitting in bed. And on top of this, not on top of this, but equally is knowing that there's nothing in my day. There's nothing planned. And so that everything is just going to be spontaneous, because so much of my life is busy and full. And the days when I know there isn't anything there in the day and it's going to be spontaneous and I'm having my coffee, that I love.
I completely relate to that. I have to have my coffee in a special little cup as well.
Totally.
It makes me feel so happy.
Totally.
Okay, next question. What's the last photo you took?
Photo I took? Well, it was a little bit of a sad one. I took my dog to the vet, and I know he was really, really ill, really ill. And he had this cough, and everyone's going, it's kennel cough, but I knew it wasn't, he's old. And I took my young son, Horatio, with me to the vet, and he held him still while the vet was checking him. And you could tell, we all knew that little Walter wasn't well. And just the face of Horatio with his eyes closed and this love, the way he was cradling this dog's head, it was just, I even thinking about it, I actually go, whoa.
Yeah.
And I just had to capture it. So that's what I did.
That's sad, but also really wonderful.
Exactly. It was extraordinary.
Bittersweet, beautiful.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful answer. Okay. Next question. What's something that people frequently misunderstand or get wrong about you?
They think I'm tough and I'm the softest thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I am strong. My kids would go, yeah. My eldest son calls me the claw. I said, what do you mean the claw? No. And he said, do you remember in Toy Story, the claw? And I said, that's so terrible. He said, no, Mum. You're there and you hover. And I know if I do something wrong, you're going to come down. Okay. He said, but also if I fall over, you'll be the first to come down and pick me up.
God, that's lovely.
It is,
that's
isn't it?
so insightful.
Yes. Because I kind of saw it as, and I am quick and I'm fiery, but I'm deeply soft and kind.
Okay. Okay, I want to get into that later, but quick fire. Okay, last quick fire question. Finish the sentence. I'm still a work in progress when it comes to
women's equality in this world.
And how is that something that you're a work in progress with?
Because I have to deeply understand what that truly means. And every day look at how I interact and how I am. And actually every day for years of the way that I've been brought up, this, all the social editing that we go through for years.
Social editing, can you expand on what that means?
From day one, sort of knowing how, what's acceptable for being a woman, what's acceptable for being a young girl, what's acceptable, even how I maybe look after my sons compared to my daughter.
Okay.
Even how I might treat a male member of staff versus how I treat a female. All the time thinking, are you doing this? Are you walking this? Are you being this?
Embodying it.
Yeah, because unless I am, I don't see how it can ever happen.
You've just launched a new podcast called Beautiful Misfits. I love the concept of the show. Can you talk a bit more about that and why you wanted to start it?
Well, I've always felt the people that have inspired me most in the world, the teachers or my companions or the people that I've been drawn to, are the people who have been strong enough to truly be themselves. And I think that is the most difficult thing to be. And in society today, when you truly are yourself, and you and I have talked about this, when you're truly yourself, you don't fit into the social structures that have created this society that we have today. And I think that takes real energy. I think that takes strength. I think that takes vulnerability and beauty. And I tried to conform for so long. And I realised not until I was 37 that actually my power was not fitting in. My power was being a misfit. So from the school, when I was, a working class kid that went to a posh convent school, I thought I wanted to be like those girls and ride horses and live in a big house. And actually what came out of my working class roots was a great kind of gritty, earthy, queerness that was beautiful. My mother read poetry, but because we didn't have money, it didn't make us any less. And so I learned so much through that and the 5 kids that I grew up with. I believe that the people who have made progress in the world are the ones that haven't followed the system. And they've been knocked for it. And yet I see such a beauty at the heart of it. And I wanted to meet with those people who are saying, I know the world's shaped this way, but I believe there's a better way. And that's what I wanted to put out into the world, and through them misfitting show the beauty of it.
When would you say your moment was when you realised that it was your power to be a misfit and power to stand out? Was there something that happened, or?
Well, I suppose, I always, when I look back on myself, I even in my early days, I was the 4th out of 5 kids, and I didn't feel identified. I didn't know, I wasn't the eldest, I wasn't the youngest, I wasn't the firstborn girl. So I always felt like, where's my voice?
Okay, yeah.
So that always, and then so I started being quite, naughty and loud and like always in trouble. My siblings were like, oh, shut up, Mary, And then that actually brought me into being a great performer. And by 14, I was on the stage. And by 18, I'd got into RADA. So it actually was great.
What's RADA? Sorry?
Royal Academy of Dramatic Art.
Okay.
And then my parents died. When my mother died when I was 16 and my father by 19. And I remember feeling slightly embarrassed by this loss. I didn't want to talk to people about it because I didn't want them to feel sorry for me. And yet I was in grief. But from that grief grew my strength to have to live on my own and make my own money. And then I think probably the final thing was falling in love with a woman. Yeah. And saying, when I was in the public eye, I'm gay, I'm with a woman, or whatever title we've talked about. That, in the end, and I was like, first of all, I remember it so vividly, my business partner, who was a gay man, saying, when you're being interviewed, don't mention it. And I was like, okay, and being guided on that.
Yeah, it's like you come out only to then be told so many times when it's appropriate to be out. Yeah,
then because you're glamorous and, you're in the fashion, everybody loves your clothes and wants to see you in that way. And I was like, yeah. And then once I went, no, sod this. And it went out. Sort of stratospherically, my career took off. And
wow, yeah.
Yeah, it was like I was really sort of connecting, and I realised then, this is the way. This is it. No one can touch you. No one can touch you when you tell the truth.
And when you came out, did you feel that there was almost this responsibility on you then to represent the queer community, or did you not feel that? How were you being positioned in the media when you did
totally
come
as
out?
that, completely title of, lesbian.
Like lesbian icon.
Icon. I remember, my daughter, it was this, God, this is such a sweet story. At first I was like, oh my God, my daughter was, she's 7. Yeah. And
she was 7.
Yeah. And it was really so sweet. I remember we had this very strict Catholic nanny who looked after the kids. And I remember one day coming home from work, and it had just gone public, and I was kind of very aware for my ex-husband because his name, she was married to this man, and I really wanted to protect him. So, and I want to protect my children. Yep. It was being written about in the Daily Mail. It was written about, every paper. And I hadn't given really big interviews, but my wife, who was my girlfriend then, was joyous and fun. And my daughter just thought she was fabulous. And we took them to San Francisco and met all these other kind of crazy lesbians who were fabulous. And it was just fun, it was fun. Yeah. And my kids were like, they didn't think any of it anyway. I remember so vividly Verity leaving her little prep school, and she was writing a card to one of the friends that she was leaving behind, and I knew the family were quite straight. And we're sitting at supper, and this very deep Catholic nanny sitting opposite me, and Verity says, "How do you spell lesbian?" So I'm like, oh my God, where do I start? What's being written in the card, right? I'm dreading it. Yeah. So I just go, LESBIAN. Why is that, Verity? And Milo pops in and goes, "Verity's a lesbian now." And she went, "Yeah, I am." Like, "Why are you a lesbian?" "I love Leah." And I'm just like, this is so beautiful, right? She saw the joy, the fun, She'd been in San Marino.
No negative connotation.
Not one
No.
negative. Anyway, but the negative connotations are all going in me thinking, what's being written to this very straight family? What's being written in the card? And, anyway, I pick the cards up after we've had supper and I read it and it says, "Dear Leah, you are like a sunflower." It's so beautiful.
Oh my God.
I love you and will miss you. Love, Verity. P.S. Lesbian.
Oh my God.
P.S. Lesbian. My producer said that should be the title of your next autobiography. I was like, I laughed so much. But there was me trying to protect and go, don't write anything wrong. And actually, what she saw it as was, this is love, this is fun. And then a few years later, she was getting teased. And I remember her coming off the school coach and saying to me, "Oh, I'm really sad." I said, "I'm sorry, they're teasing you." And she went, "No, I'm sad for you. I don't want them saying that about you." Girls' school, really tough. He didn't get it as much. She didn't.
How was it for you then, being someone who is so strong and so driven in your career and all aspects of your life, to have to almost manage and please a lot of people with who you were during that period? Was there a conflict, or was that natural to you?
No, that was a conflict, and I remember it. Had I been, your age, it would have been like, whoa, but I had 2 children. I had an ex-husband. I had a very public profile in on TV, and
you're embedded in people's minds in a way.
Yes, and also, so you have to surf this. And it was really not easy. And subsequently, don't forget when we had a child, when my wife gave birth to our son, the father of that child, who was the donor, was my younger brother.
Wow.
So that got front page of the Times and magazine, like front page. And I remember ringing him and going, "Listen, I'm sorry." And he was like, "Look, sis, love you, but this is full on." And and then part of me wants to say, but it's not. It's what we have to do, But
no one wants to talk about the measures that queer women, lesbian women, bi women have to go to have the children. And it's almost seen as like this dirty thing.
And also I was bringing him in, and I did feel there was a lot of angst on so many levels. And I look back, actually, I haven't thought about that for a long while. So many times I was like, please don't mention my ex-husband. Please don't mention my brother. And you're reading the press, please don't mention my kids. Or, someone sending the Daily Mail in with their kids to school. And you're like, what sort of mother's that? And then I'm wanting to ring up the mother, and then like my daughter, don't do that. But so it was this, on one side, deeply freeing and wonderful, but on the other, not easy.
Would you say that public life, as well, with everything that you've been through, with losing your parents at such a young age and everything, would you say that has built a lot of resilience in you? Because even you explaining that once, I didn't know that about you. I know what it's like to go through so many things in the public eye. I imagine you've been through that a few times in many different ways. I think it's anyone who's in the public eye, now I know what it's like. I find them absolutely remarkable when they're still standing and they're still going out and still talking about the things that they care about, because you have to be so resilient. Do you feel like public life has built resilience in you, or is it just, do you not feel it anymore? Is it like normal?
No, I think there is a great deal of resilience, which is a beautiful thing to have, because it is, look, if we listen to the great spiritual teachers who know a huge more than I do, that's how we grow. That really is through that pain. And that is, and and I've had a fair share of that where I thought, wow, I'm not sure I can keep this up. I can do this. And yet something comes back in. I'm looking at this 60-year-old woman going, shit, why am I even fighting this next thing? What am I on here on?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And I realise that it's my calling. I can't, and every part of that, every step of that has been to do so. When I get letters or emails from young gay women, it just feels great. Or I was at the Women Equality with Sandy Toxic the other day, and she was just saying, like, in her, even when she first was outed, it was real fear. She had to go and hide away. There were people like just trolling and after her. This was about 10 years before me. And, you realise we kind of have to do this. And I sat next to someone at the dinner and who was a gay woman, had kids, and I talked about my ex-husband. She went, "Oh my God, I didn't know you'd been married before. You were my icon." I said, "What, you mean I actually slept with men, so I'm not your icon anymore?"
Wow.
It was really... every step's, when you just do something that's outside the structures that we've just for eons lived in. You don't realise how deep that goes into us. There's a line that goes back generations and generations. We think we're living it just today, but that's gone through our bodies of how society should be, how you should be. And then you pop in and there's you at 20-something doing this and going, I'm up against the same shit.
Yeah, I think every woman that I've interviewed, it doesn't matter how old you are. It's I was interviewed by a woman recently she was 50 years old, and I was telling her my story about experiencing harassment with bar staff and the bouncers in the club and stuff, and she said, "God, that was my feminism introductory story. So how the fuck has that not changed in our age gap difference? How was that still our same experience?" I've said to you before in your podcast that I would like to start a company, I'd like to start a brand. What advice would you give to me or anyone listening? Some kind of tangible, actionable things to consider when starting a brand.
So the first thing I was saying, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this?
So the purpose.
Yeah, what is it? And people, what is it? And what's my philosophy? Are the things that I really believe in that are intrinsic to me, that I don't park in my social life or the way I deal with my friends and my family and then create a different way of this business? Would I do that to my best friend? Would I do that to my children? Like, when you saw the energy crisis that we've got, and you saw that Shell made 6.9 billion in 3 months, and there's people who absolutely elder generation, people who are on the breadline, who cannot even heat one of their rooms, right? What human is in there that doesn't see that?
Yes.
What if I've made a lot of money.
What human in Shell?
Shell or any business.
Yeah, any business.
So I've had a very good life, right? I've made a lot of money. I mean, not like these, but a wealthy life. I don't have to worry about where that money comes. If my sister was like, I can't afford this, do you think I'd go, well, I'm sorry, that's not, your choice is that you didn't, you went into nursing, Tish, so I went into commerce, so of course I'd give it to her.
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that be a humane, decent thing to do? So anybody starting a business today, I would say, think of the moral compass at the heart of it. Think why you're doing it. You can make a fashion brand because you like fashion. You can do art. You can do anything, hair, anything. But am I doing good for me, and am I doing good for the world? That's it. And it doesn't have to be huge, sustainable, eco. It just has to have that moral compass and heart.
It's integrity, isn't it? And it's having values, and it's putting people first. Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. Have you always been so confident with asserting what you want in business and what the kind of life that you'd want? Because I've listened to some of your interviews where you've said that you like a nice life, and I loved hearing you say that because it was like almost like this permission slip to dream bigger. And I feel like that's what me and my friends do for each other. We're constantly telling each other it's okay to want a nice life. It's okay to do these nice things. And I think that because we assume business and making money is tied to abuse of power,
which it has been historically.
Yeah, it's like there's almost this guilt attached to power when actually power can be used for good.
Yes. Well, it's a bit like being a gay woman who looks beautiful and puts lipstick on. Do you know what I mean? That's how far we've come. It's the same thing.
In what way?
Well, I like a good life. I like to buy beautiful things. I like a beautiful home.
Yeah.
But if I was creating that and I was abusing staff and sacking them because I wanted to make a bigger bonus, then that's shit. That's quite fundamentally unhumane. So I like, when my business makes profit, I get a big slice of the cake. Big slice of the cake because I've risked everything. I've set it up. I'm the name above the door. Yeah. Right? But I make sure they've all got a slice too. Right? And as it grows and it gets better, they get a bit more. Yeah. And that just to me seems sense, so you don't take for yourself. And, I used to go through some of these fashion, everyone used to think, fashion's so glamorous. And the other thing is, the sort of fashion editorial world, you go to the offices and there's shitholes. And you think, how are you putting people in this? And so I try and create places where my team feel this is wonderful, this is joyous, there's light, there's lunch that's put on, we all sit down together having the same lunch. It's just being connected and creating something that has value and values the people at the heart of it. So, I'm some of the people that I've interviewed on the kindness economy, the great businesses that made a lot of money. Look what he's made at Patagonia. He's just given his business to Mother Earth. He's given away a £billions business and said, my only shareholder is Mother Earth. He grew that business and made one of the most successful retail businesses by putting people and planet before profit. And in doing so, he made more profit than half those other buggers. Wow. It's extraordinary. Yeah. And what are we coming down to? You come down to a truth. And here's the thing, when you're not doing it. It's like, when you've just been a bit mean to someone, or you think, oh God, I was a bit mean there. Something inside you touches you, our inner little whisper that tells us that doesn't feel right. That's what I try and listen to. And sometimes I do get it wrong. Jesus, I'm no bloody saint by far, but it's just being decent.
Yeah. As someone who appeared to have it all, the career, the kids and everything going on, how do you feel like that perception, because I've heard you talk about it in interviews before, where it's like this, women are encouraged to think that we can have it all and do it all, and then we end up balancing lots of plates and then having a burnout moment. How has that affected you in your career and in your personal life? Like, have you ever felt a pressure to have it all and be all things at once?
I think once you start doing it, I think I'm a bit like I think you are. Like, you keep taking things on.
Yes.
I think that's what you're going to be, and I think and I love that because I get excited and I used to pick up a lot in the home. I ended up I think it started from when my mother died. I was 16, and Lawrence, my younger brother, who went on to be Father Horatio, he was 14. But my elder siblings had left to go to university, and so I ended up being the one who kind of looked after the house. And weirdly, I never lost that role. I became the sort of matriarch in the family.
Okay, so loads of responsibility.
Well, yeah, I mean, just that everybody would then come home at the weekends, and I couldn't wait for my elder siblings to come, and it was like warm again because we so miss mum, just that no one being there when you got home from school was just horrendous. But, and so I took that on, and the thing was, I always thought I could do most, so I think it was difficult to look after me because I was like, yeah, I can do that. And then when I started to make money, and then I was 30 on the board of Harvey Nixon, flying around the world and, doing deals with designers. And I was like, oh my God, I can do this. This is great. So I took that on, and I was married, and I became the bigger wage earner. And I was like, oh, don't worry if you want to change your career and go into lecturing and leave engineering, and I'll pick that up. And then I'll pick up I'll pick up the kids' school fee. I'll pick up that. And I found myself able to. I didn't feel... But then you look and you go, wow. And what happens is, even though you're loved, people do find it difficult to care for you. And I remember once having a row with my ex-wife going, but no one looks after you. But everybody loves you, everybody. And I go, no, everyone's most people that you talk about, they're either on my payroll.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in any other way. Of course they're going to be lovely to me, but that's a very different from someone really looking after you. And I knew that I had done that a lot in my family. But often I've said it, and my sister said, my younger brother, it's quite difficult knowing how to look after you, Mary. So that's why I say to you, sometimes just go be vulnerable. And with my kids sometimes, like, they're much better now. Like my daughter checking on me, are you okay, Mama? You okay, Mama? I know it's been a lot, and I go, yeah, I am, darling, because I will still do it.
Yeah, I find it really hard to know when I'm taking on too much, because my threshold for projects, even my idea of success, is warped and changed. I find it hard to know when I'm taking on too much and I'm at max capacity, or when Floss can get it done, because that's what Floss always does.
Yeah. We can rely on Floss.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's really hard. Yeah.
And I think, well, maybe that little coffee moment, that's why we're probably obsessed by it.
Yes.
Because it's ours.
Oh my God, yes.
Nothing in the dark.
No, that's so true.
That's it. Maybe that's all we're bloody destined for. I hope it is.
Because I'm trying to, I would like to launch a brand. I'm doing the podcast. Also, I would like to write another book. And then there's so many things constantly that want my attention, but I set them up. I set all of these things up. Of course you did, same here.
I'm like, I literally said to myself, right, okay, I'm taking a month out and I'm going to go, and I went to this great little Greek island where I go. And I'm there, and my kids go, "Oh, you can't go without us, Mama. We're going to come." So I said, "Okay, right. The first couple of weeks you're out there, then bugger off, you lot, you know." So they all came out. It was brilliant. And then I spent 10 days on my own. By the third day, I'd come up with a new idea. I'm ringing Kareem, my CEO. I go, "Okay, I've got this. This is what we're doing." And then now I am literally 5 days a week full on.
Yeah, full on work.
Full on, yeah. And this new everything. Right, okay, I've got this really big idea. It's not going to stop, Florence. It won't stop for you. And here's the thing: you're going to have a wonderful, joyous, mad, crazy, bumpy ride.
Yeah.
And you'll go up and you'll go down. There's times where you'll go, "Oh my God, this can't get lower."
Yeah.
And there's times where those highs will not get higher. You won't swap it for the world.
No.
You will not swap it for the world. But just make sure that when you get that feeling of that tiredness in your bones, you go, "I'm checking out." So I will now go to my team. "I'm out. I'm clearing off. Just leave me alone." And they'll know within 2 days they'll get a phone call going, "I've got another idea."
No, that's me. I cross my own work boundaries. I say, right, I'm off. No one talks to me.
No one talks to me.
And then I'm on the... Through the journey, through everything, has success, to your understanding of what success is, ever brought you joy?
You know what? It's the contentment that's beautiful. That's where, I mean, I've had times where it's just been magical. And you know what, though? Those times where I've felt joy have been the most simple things. Yes. But really simple. I remember even, being married, my first marriage, and with my husband, and I was in a supermarket with my little kids, and I had my daughter around, just this little cutest little head, and the smell of her head just under my nose, and he was pushing my son in a trolley, and I just remember this feeling of complete contentment and beauty. And it wasn't anything to do with, some of the high life of sitting in, Paris with designers. That was never where I got my joy. Yeah. I got that. I loved the fact that I could crack that and sit with, doing a deal with Dulce and Gabbana or, whoever, or having lunch with Karl Lagerfeld. But that's not what I ever remember, They're not the things I remember. And some of them would be the most beautiful, where I felt I was in harmony with my frequency, And, sometimes I wake up in my home in the country and I'll just open the back door and I'll just see, a little kestrel that's been nesting, and I just think, that's it. It's not, and a contentment, and that's not to say I have days. It's always like that, because there's days when I can feel flat, and I go, where's this coming from? Stop it. How is that? But generally, as a life that I live, it's very, very rich and very beautiful, and always something new comes in, or someone new I'll meet, like you. Yeah. Like today we've met, and you go, how lovely was that,
Yeah, it's the little things.
These two worlds came, and, whether we'll see each other again or where or whatever. And we were able to sit down and just talk openly from our hearts. Mm-hmm. That's just beautiful. So it's those things. It's never the big woohoos. No. And I think we chase those, but it's never that, really.
I think that those kind of woo-woos, that they're the things that are like almost... That's what other people put on you and expect. And it almost takes experiencing those things to realise that's not where the joy lies. I find beauty and joy in the mundane as well, in those moments when the sun's shining on my body, or I see someone having a moment reading a book on their own, or someone kissing their partner. I love seeing people in love. Those kinds of things are the things that make me really happy. And usually it's to do with other people. And like I said at the beginning, same thing with my coffee cup in the morning. It's those little rituals also that bring me so much joy. I love
rituals. I think we can underestimate a ritual. The same as the other end of the evening when that bottle of wine comes open. Let me tell you about that one.
When people go, grounding.
Of course it is. Yeah. And people go, oh no, I try not to drink. You're telling me when you're cooking and a glass of wine, then you put on a great piece of music and you listen to Caribbean or whatever, I don't know.
On your own as well.
On your own.
Yes. Yeah.
And you think, I'm just going to go upstairs, I'm going to sit in the sitting room, I'm going to put on whatever, and I'm going to watch it, and I'm going to get that bowl of popcorn. So it's and the Buddhists have a great, and I often say it as a prayer. I'm not a Buddhist, but I'm very spiritual. I often say it as a prayer, and you think of people, you're meant to think of 3 people each day, and you think of someone you know, and then you think of someone you don't know so well, and then you think of someone that you might, like the person that you've just seen a couple of times a week walking the road, and you know they're a neighbour, and you just say, may he be strong, may he be safe, may he be content, and may he be at ease. And once you realise that, if you feel strong, safe, content and at ease, well, it don't get much better than that,
There's so much gratitude in that as well, because it's not even about you, it's about other people, but you get something from that.
But you know that you're coming from that place where you're feeling that in order to give it out.
Yeah. That's lovely.
Yeah,
do you have a book or some kind of spiritual teaching that you would say was pivotal for you in this journey?
Well, the biggest awakening, I went away and I went away to one of these very sort of like, we were going to go detox, me and my wife, and it was a very lovely area. You know, it was beautiful. It was one of those great big sort of spas. But it was
this recently or?
No. This was years ago. This was 15 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, 15 years ago, maybe longer. And I was really tired, and it was very wonderful. And there were these beautiful. The Vedantas, the Vedas, they were Indian, so it was Ayurveda treatments. But they said to us when we came, there is, and he was, I don't know whether they called him a guru, this Indian guru, used to sit in a library if anybody wants to go and see him and meditate. And I'm like, I haven't got time for that. I'll go and have a facial, So I went and did the facials and the bodies, and then you did your yoga and you did your Vedic. And one day I just saw him sitting in there, and when you just see someone who's so connected with who they are. And it doesn't have to be a guru or a Buddha. I've seen it. I just saw it the other day. I'm on a trust, a foundation where we give money to charity. And I went to this food bank, and this woman who was running it, older woman, was opening the food bank. And I stood in front of her, and I just knew that she was pure. I can give back, but I have a profile. I get a lot of glamour that goes with it, as do you.
Yeah.
This was someone who just was behind the scenes running the food bank, and I just felt her purity. Yeah. And I saw him, and I went in, and as I went in, he just said, hello, and I started crying. And he said, what are you looking for? I said, I don't know, and I couldn't speak. And I just cried and cried. And he gave me this book, and it was called the Vedanta Treatise, and it was all the ancient Indian, which is the same as the Buddhist ones, and I couldn't understand a word. I thought, what is this? What the hell is this? Couldn't read it. 3 days later, I go back and I picked up a book called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And I read it, and I realised I'd got the world so wrong. Wow. So he was my first. And then Pema Chodron, the Buddhist nun, I read one of her teachings every day. Rilke, the poet Rilke. And it's just part of my life. I read the poetry of Mary Oliver, and I just realised that, we just are disconnected. And so it connects me back with my truth.
Yeah, that's lovely. I'm going to take on some of those recommendations. I've still never read an Eckhart Tolle book, even though they've been recommended to me so many
Because
times.
you're not ready to come to it.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's it.
You'll come to it when you're ready to come to it. Or maybe you won't.
Yeah, maybe today's the day. So I'm going to move on to the listener questions now. If you could give me a hand answering them. Here's question 1. I work in a very male-dominated environment and feel like I have to armour up when I go into work. It feels toxic, but I don't want to quit as the money's good. Do you have any advice on how to handle this situation?
Well, you know it yourself. It feels toxic, but I don't want to quit because the money's good. Yeah. There'll be money elsewhere. So you have to, I could say, well, you go in and you try and re-educate them. Yeah. Look, you know what? We all do this. The amount of times that we've gone, the money's good. I know this isn't right and it's not giving me joy. How long do you hold on for? So there's a couple of things you can, and I don't know what structure it is or what's happening in your business, but you can let them know and try and speak with other people in the business. If there's women, I don't know if there's a woman that's written in, that actually try and change and shift that and say, we'd like to come together because we think that the way that we work, the culture is not working, and you actually put some things forward to the team. If you really know in your soul it's not going to change, just look elsewhere. Yeah. Don't feed that shit. Yeah. Don't feed it. I'm sorry. And That's change. When you think, oh, I can't because there won't be money, there will. If you follow your truth and you go, this isn't good for me, it's not good for the world. Yeah, the money's good, but you'll find money elsewhere if you follow your truth.
There's also the thing, whoever sent this in, they're talking about the money's good, but there's also a cost for staying.
Of course there is. To your well-being.
You just don't see it.
To your sense of self.
Yeah.
Do you know how much that does, what it goes into your body and how that makes you feel? Don't know. Get out. Look elsewhere. And actually know and say to yourself, I'm falling back into this and I'm putting myself out to the world. Guide me. Talk to it. Hover over me, help me through this. Talk to whatever energy that's out there. It is there, and connect with that and get yourself out.
Okay. Next question. I've just finished uni and I'm so confused about what I want to do with my life. Do you have any tips on finding my purpose or creating a meaningful career? It feels so overwhelming and I don't know where to start.
It is overwhelming. And if anyone tells you what's your passion or asks you that, just slap them quickly around the face, because none of us have that. Most of us stumble over it. I never knew what I wanted to do, and I had the doors closed when my father died, and I couldn't go and become an actress at RADA, so I had to redo it, and sometimes I fell flat on my face. Here's the thing that I would say to you. If there's anything that you have a slight inclination towards that you think that's interesting, just push the door open on it and just peer around it, because what happens is that little door that you push will maybe open up another one. You don't have to set out. When I used to sit and do interviews years ago, they say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Listen, I don't know where I am tomorrow.
I get asked that.
Yeah. It's shit. Anyone who asks you that, just walk away. I don't even know where I'm going to be tomorrow. And even how your day turns out is never what you think it's going to be. And actually, the minute you think you're meant to be here, the only thing that ever happens is disappointment. So every day, look at the opportunities, and there might be little lights or conversations, and follow them. If you are interested in something, follow it. Don't feel embarrassed to ask. Don't feel embarrassed to anybody that you see or you hear is doing something that interests you. Can I sit and work with you for a day? Can I meet with you? So many of us hold back. If I could write how many times people push themselves forward to ask me or write to me and say, could you have a coffee with me, Mary? There's a lot of pushy people out there in the world. And you know what? Be that. Don't feel embarrassed. And people say, no, I'm not going to meet with you. If you're interested in something and they don't want to meet with you, move on to the next. But don't feel you've got to have a big plan. You won't have it. It's only just open up each day and be curious and follow that curiosity.
And what would you say opening the doors could look like? Could that even just be researching something with the incarnation?
Yes, you'll feel stimulated about something. You might read something and think, oh, that sounds interesting, or I like that. And you'll say to yourself, and all what will happen is your mind will come and go, you can't do that.
Yes.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
You're not big enough. And actually you just go, why is that message coming into me? Why is that giving me a little bit of joy or a little bit of excitement? Then push that and just follow it. And that's what happens. That's how it opens. That's how it opens and unfolds and life unfolds. And then you start going on to your next thing. You don't have to have a big plan. It's the worst thing anyone could put in you. And if someone says to you, what's your passion? Please, just forget it. None of us have passions. We have interest.
Yeah.
And so we're lucky if someone says, I've always wanted to be an actor or I've always wanted to be an artist. They're bloody lucky. They're rare, though. They're rare.
There you go. If you're listening, this is your permission slip to follow your curiosity. Okay, on to the next question. Do you have any tips for asserting boundaries at work? I'm quite junior and I feel like I've been taken advantage of, as I always work longer than my contracted hours, for example. I'm scared to push back and set boundaries. Do you have any advice?
Yeah, I think you can do it. I mean, I go through this with my daughter all the time, you'll see the work culture that's around you. And if there is a work culture of, working late and you'll feel embarrassed because you've got to actually promise your friend that you're going to go and have supper with her, or you were meant to go out for a drink, or you actually have a doctor's appointment, what you have to do is do where you really genuinely feel I'm giving my utmost. And now I'm falling into this place where I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Meet your uncomfortableness, meet it and go, right, here's the challenge. Here it is. Pack your bag and walk out of the office and go if you feel it's time for you to go home. Just watch what happens. Few people will say anything to you. Believe you me.
Yeah.
Few people will say.
You feel it in your body, don't you?
You feel it, it's like, oh God, and I'm sitting there and you're watching old Sybil in the corner who's going to hang on a bit longer, and you're thinking, what's that conversation that they're having? They're probably looking at me thinking I'm not doing enough. I mean, your mind is just horrendous in these situations. Follow the inner frequency that says, I know I've done enough. I know. And watch if they pick you up. They probably won't. And if they do, sit and have that conversation then and go, do you know what? I really feel I'm giving my... Is there anything you think I'm not doing? And put it back on them.
Yeah.
But unless you start to change this, nothing changes. So you know what you could... And what's it, Gandhi? Be the change you want to see. It's the only way to do it. And I know it's all right me sitting here at the top of my game and having made the money I have. But I wish I had done more of that when I was younger.
Yeah.
And many people that I've spoken to who do this, you find actually people aren't thinking, God, look at her going off. They just don't. They just don't. Yeah. Or, you know, the other thing is throw it back at them. Throw it back at your boss and just say, you know, is it okay if I leave at this time, you know, in the evenings? Or let me know. Will you let me know if you need me to work on any later? Just see what they say.
So it's like putting the responsibility.
Yeah, back on them.
Okay. What's one piece of advice you'd give yourself as a young woman?
Oh, just be less hard on yourself, Jesus.
Yeah.
Just be less hard on yourself. Just be kind to you. You know, the times that you're, even if I find itself sometimes now I'm doing things, you know, and you think, what did you sound like there? Well, God, you idiot. And we do that. We speak badly to ourselves sometimes, you know. Just be kind to yourself. Look after yourself. Look after that young person who's in there. You know, love them. Talk to them. I think I wish I'd done that. I didn't even know I was in there. And I'm talking about your soul, really connecting and going, you know what, you're very beautiful and you're good. And this just, I love you. That's what I would have done more of.
Wow, what a wonderful episode. I feel like I have so much to take in from Mary, just even with her business ethic and how she runs a brand, how she teaches brands to run their brands is definitely something that I would like to do in the future. I love that she teaches this different way of doing business to the boys club and the traditional way that we have been taught to mimic business in the industry, whether it's a fashion industry or it's a 9-to-5 job in the office. I think that we have all been taught that you need to kind of push people out the way to get to where you want to be. And that's definitely not a way that I want to do my business. It's not a way I live my life. And I just think it's really inspiring to talk to someone who is a leading and living example of doing just that. Thank you so much again to Mary for joining me today and to all of you for listening. You can find her on Instagram and Twitter at Mary Portas Official.